National Economic Council backs planned distribution of grains, fertilizer from July 24th, support cost of living allowance for civil servants. FAC shares close to 1 trillion naira June 2023 revenue to federal, state and local governments, plus global shares subdued after U.S. tech earnings disappoint. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Musa Abubakar, your guide. National Economic Council has thrown its weight behind the planned distribution of grains and fertilizer to Nigerians by the federal government through the Central Bank of Nigeria to mitigate the impact of the removal of petrol subsidy on citizens. Statement by Director Information Office of the Vice President Olushola Abiola says the decision was part of resolutions reached at the fourth meeting of the council chaired by Vice President Kashim Shettima. The decision was taken after a presentation by the NEC Ad Hoc Committee on questioning the effects of petrol subsidy removal was made by a number of state governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo. The statement added that the meeting also resolved to support enhanced engagements between state governors and leadership of the labor unions across the state and proposed the provision of the cost of living allowances to be paid to civil servants in both the state and federal civil services. The council agreed to support federal government's effort to scale up infrastructure, especially to give attention to fixing dilapidated highway roads across the country. The meeting also endorses deployment of compressed natural gas vehicles for public transportation across the country. Nigeria's foreign reserve has declined to two-year low to 33.98 billion naira. Latest data obtained from CBN shows that this is the lowest level Nigeria's foreign reserve has touched since August 30th, 2021, when it was $33.93 billion. Nigeria's reserve has been on a downward trend despite expectations that the CBN decision to float the naira will lower the pressure on the foreign reserves. Foreign exchange reserve are assets dominated in other currencies like dollars. The reserve are utilized to back up liabilities and influence monetary policy. The Federation Account Allocation Committee, FAC, has shared the sum of 907.054 billion naira June 2023 Federation account revenue to the federal government, states and local government councils. This was contained in a communique issued at the end of the Federation Account Allocation Committee FAC meeting for July 2023, chaired by the Accountant General of the Federation, Dr. Oluwatoyin Maiden. The total distributable revenue comprised distributable statutory revenue of 301.501 billion naira, distributable revenue added tax revenue of 273.225 billion naira, electronic money transfer levy revenue of 11.436 billion naira, and exchange difference revenue of 320.892 billion naira. The balance in the excess crude account was $473,754.57. Still on revenues, the Federal Inland Revenue Service says it has so far collected total tax revenue of more than 5.5 trillion naira for the half-year period of January to June 2023, the highest tax revenue collection ever recorded by the service in any first 6 months of a fiscal year. Benny Adams reports.
5.5 trillion tax revenue collection is a cheering news from the executive chairman of the FIRS, Mohammed Nami, as he unveiled the 2023 to 2024 half-year collection report delivered at the National Economic Council meeting this Thursday. The report showed the FIRS has achieved more than 100% of its target for the first half of the year when compared with mid-year target of 5.3 trillion naira. NEMI says tax revenue collected from oil sector from January to June 2023 stood at 2.03 trillion naira as against a target of 2.3 trillion, while non-oil tax collection stood at 3.76 trillion as against a target of 2.98 trillion. He added that a total of 1.65 trillion tax revenues collected in June 2023 is the highest tax revenue collected by the service in a single month, in spite of stubborn headwinds.
The second half of the year, we were very optimistic will be better, with the expected impact of the unification of exchange rates that Mr. President has introduced and directed CBN to do, which has now addressed issues of underreporting, that is, under translation of foreign currency tax collection by FIRS. In the past, because of the dual exchange rate or multiple exchange rate, our collections were always reported at the official CBN official rate as against the parallel market rate.
Mohammed Nemi appealed to taxpayers to voluntarily pay their taxes to enable government to provide citizens with their basic needs. In Abuja, Benny Adams.
The 2023-2027 Trade and Investment Policy for Nigeria has been presented to the public by the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. The policy aims at enhancing the competitiveness of Nigerian businesses and strengthening institutional frameworks and regulatory environments that drives trade and investment. Nigeria's investment policy and its plan for improving domestic and global trade is our focus on the program. And our guest is the National President of the Nigerian Association Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, Dele Kelvin Oye. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you very much.
Okay, before we now look at the policy, I would like to, if you could share your thought with me on the recent FAC federal allocation, money shared to states and local government. It seems to be the highest in June. The highest so far. If you look at what the federal, state, and local government have been sharing so far, and what do you make of it? And with the a huge chunk of the money put aside to address the issue of infrastructure.
Well, one is not surprised with the increased collection as reported by FIRS. That is naturally because government used to underreport using the official exchange rate. But now that it's in the market, naturally the revenue is bound to go up. They also have other challenges coming with it, increased prices, and also for imported goods and services. So these are other huge challenges, also with the new fuel increase. All these are things that have made government to underreport before. But we are now trying to operate a full market economy. We are still not there yet. There's a lot of disequilibrium going on. So government is only getting revenue. There also be natural added responsibility from workers' wages, running costs, and we in the private sector too are also fully impacted because we have to change our calculus to be able to meet our global competitiveness.
How does this impact the private sector? You mentioned that the private sector is also impacted. Will be impacted.
Yes, when prices go up, naturally affects the price of inputs into any form of production, whether you are in production, whether in services, or even you are in manufacturing. So we are doing our figures and our numbers, and also we also expect to. That's why we've been on the government for government to bring down the interest rates on loans, go back to single-digit rates, and also for government to realize that if it tends to generate enough money from the structural reforms that are going on, which the taxpayer are going to virtually pay, which is the way in the private sector. Government must also do the necessary investment by putting some of these gains, the money they are saving from the subsidy removal, into development institutions like banks, Bank of Industry, Development Bank, so that we can borrow at much, much cheaper rates. That in itself would just help to bring down the rate of inflation indirectly. Because the much money you are collecting now, put it in investment banks, so that these banks would, and with instructions that they should do it on single-digit rates. And it's doable. Indeed, Bank of Industry has several products that is in single-digit rates. It depends on who is giving the money and the terms attached to it. So if government takes this as part of its investment, we can get these loans at less than 5-6% interest rate. That in itself will cut down, even though other cost elements are going up. But the input from the finance angle will just naturally bring down prices. So instead of you having inflation coming out of finished products or services, it will now translate to lower prices. And I think that itself can be used to fight the current inflation trend.
Okay, now let's talk about the national investment policy. What do you actually make of the document, and are you optimistic that it will live to its objectives?
Well, first of all, I'm very proud that for the first time we're having a national investment policy and trade policy. And what is remaining is the industrial policy, because the three policies must go together. Before, there was no policy. What it means is everybody just dream and come with anything. But since there's already a structure now, we are still studying it and actually buying into it. This allows everyone involved in planning or even involved in any form of development programs for Nigeria to work in the same direction. Before now, there was no direction. People just come up and say, I thought, and they start. But now, we are all looking at the same document. We know government is faithful to it. We in the private about what I've always, Nasima has always preached about, that you should have a policy that everyone can look at and work towards, instead of us hitting at different directions. Instead of pulling apart, we are going to pull together under it. And I encourage all the stakeholders to take time to go through it, understand it. We at Nasima were already doing internal study on it, and I was there the day it was launched at the Federal National Export Promotion Council, and I made a speech that we're very proud that the government should raise up and finalize the industrial policy, because the three must go together. They must have handshake at the same time, so that we can all do the same thing at the same time.
Okay, this trade policy, how do you see it somehow helping domestic and global trade? Because with the unification of the Naira exchange rate, there's expectation on most especially the supply side. We would like to see how the supply side will be improved, so that we will see the Naira going up against the dollar. So how do you see this thing boosting domestic and global trade?
Well, first of all, if you come to the issue of Naira, the free trade in Naira, I have to tell you that we in Nigeria, we have to decide what we want. First of all, we had an imperfect system where some few people who have access to power had access to the official rate. I, as a businessman, I've always been the other rate. And even when you try to approach the official one, say that it is not there, or the processes involved with something you want to go through as a business, because you can't calculate when you come out of it. So we're actually happy now that we all, as Nigerians, must take a decision whether you want to run a rent-seeking economy or an economy that is fair to everyone. I know naturally when you start this process, there are going to be structural imbalances. There are also people who have benefited from the old order who want to try to capitalize and frustrate this so that government would think they've made a mistake. So I just appeal to everyone to take their time, not to panic, but to try as much as possible to rejig their plans, and also for government to provide the necessary softening, cushioning effect. That's why I mentioned the issue. When government is, before initially, we're happy now we have a businessman as a government, and I think he understands how we feel too. That government must immediately deploy some of these extra resources they're saving from the old order towards development institutions that can support us, so that we too will survive, and that is how they can collect their tax. You can only collect tax on profit. So the policy on trade and the policy on investment are all supporting this process, in the sense that we all now know that this is what the government is going to do, this is how it's going to do it, and this is the framework. It provides all of us a framework to work with. Unlike before now, government can just wake up tomorrow and say anything. But now we have a policy. We are all working towards that. That's why we say all of us will have a buy-in, including the government, who is the most critical stakeholder in all this. Because if government keeps faith with it, we, the private sector, has no option. We have to also follow it. And I can tell you, the one we are having now is just like a mix-up. It's like if you are used to a particular line of business or any way, and they've changed the rules. Naturally, some people will suffer.
But do you see this policy, investment policy? Do you see it somehow boosting trade domestically?
That is the intention.
Global.
That is the intention, for it to boost trade. Okay. So it gives us a guideline, gives us the framework. You know, when you have a guideline, like having the iron rod used to build a house, once you frame it out, you will end up with what you framed. But if there was no frame before, anybody can do anything.
And what role would NASIMA be playing?
Well, NASIMA is the largest organized private sector organization in Nigeria. We are in 70 locations in all major cities and states, the 6 states. We are fully supporting the government, because we realize, whether you like it or not, you cannot work without rules. The rules determines the game. And we are giving the government the necessary advice. We've not been unnecessarily critical outside, but where we are critical, we've told them. So that, and the government has also responded positively. You can see with this thing that they gave out, some of the policies that have come out, they are all what NASIMA has always been talking about. We want more deregulation, especially in the oil sector. Because if you don't completely deregulate, you are going to have situations where people who were benefiting from the previous game will go and hide there again and start frustrating all of us. If we have full deregulation, government focus on regulation instead of trying to run business, you will see all the structural imbalances that you have within the old order. They will give way to opportunities. People will now invest, people will come to Nigeria because they can see that we are facing a market reality. Our stock market has already responded with a 17-year high rate. The FRS is happy now, because before the efforts were beyond that reported. So these things, gains will continue to come slowly and steady. But I also realize that a lot of us are going through a whole lot of hardship. And I don't undermine this. This is a lot of very trying time for people. Even some government agencies are deciding to run for 3 or 2 days in a month. I mean, in a week. But these are expected. But that's where government must now find a way to provide the succor to both the public and the private sector, so that people can exist within the current arrangement, so that we don't die before we get the benefit. But I'm optimistic that in the long run, we'll be better for it.
Okay, let me ask you a quick one before I let you go. Nigeria does not suffer from a shortage of policies. The problem is usually that of implementation. What do you think can be done differently? And how do we streamline investment attraction as a country?
Well, I will tell you one straight, that policy, not just policies, but policy consistency is very critical. This president has already given a direction he wants to go. We are happy so far, but we also have huge challenges with the policy changes. And that's why the main focus now is to address the short-term challenges associated with the policy change, so that people who will eventually run the economy in terms of sustainable way would survive these short-term shocks. Because if it is not addressed, it can create structural imbalance, and some people may never recover. Especially those of us on fixed incomes. I can imagine when you woke up in the morning, the price of transport, everything has changed, the food has changed, and it's very difficult. So even we in the private sector, we're also trying to find a way where we can increase salaries for our workers, even though we are not necessarily benefiting merely from the increased revenue. Government is the one benefiting. That's why the government will make the necessary investment in providing long-term capital and also providing resources for people in the public sector, so that they can be able to continue to do their work in an optimal way, so that we don't have a situation where everyone will be so stressed with the new policies and they are not able to survive the impact of how it affects them. So this is how we do in the private sector. We're all tightening our beds, and we hope the government will fully come down with the palliatives so that people can. I'm not in support of
Okay, let me come in one or two words. When do you expect the policy to take off?
No, the policy has started. The government has started making a lot of reforms. It's done in the oil and gas sector, and they've done, they are addressing in various ways. And there are many more they are taking care of now. We just had a round table on the special economic zones, and the government has already come out that is what they want to use to drive policy. So,
I'm afraid we have to leave it there.
No,
Thank you very much, President, the Nigerian Association Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, Daily Kelvin Oye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, moving on, the House of Representatives has passed a resolution directing the National Electricity Regulatory Commission to suspend any proposed electricity tariff hike by distribution companies pending an interface with its Committee on Power on the issue. The House notes that the proposed increase is uncalled for given the inability of operators to meet the contractual threshold of supplying 5,000 megawatts of power annually.
At this time, when Nigerians are yet to come to terms with the increase in petroleum prices.
I'm sure that the discos or the gencos, in their wisdom, don't want to also increase tariff.
Is as a result of the emerging economic realities where we have decided by law to privatize some of these sectors. If they want to increase the tariff to Nigerians, let them improve their facility.
Let's now see how oil and other commodities are trading on the global market. And now to capital market. Trading closed positive on the floor of the Nigerian stock market. On the last trading day of the week, the NGX all-share index increased to 65,003.39 basis points. Market capitalization advanced to 35.394 trillion naira. 770.799 million shares exchanged hands on the floor of the exchange in 8,915 deals, valued at 14.264 billion naira. Global shares were subdued Friday after U.S. tech earnings disappointed. Let's join Bosede Abel for a global market update.
European markets were flat on Friday as investors digested a fresh round of corporate earnings and looked ahead to a crucial Spanish election over the weekend. Asia markets were mixed on Friday as investors digested Japan's consumer price index figures for June. The country's core inflation rate, which strips out cost of fresh food, came in at 3.3%. in line with expectations of economists polled by reports. Nikkei 225 fell 0.57% to end at 32,304.25. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index climbed 0.78% in its final hour of trade, while mainland Chinese stocks also ended the day all in negative territory, with the Shanghai Composite. Stock futures in the U.S. were higher Friday as traders accessed the latest corporate earnings results, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average tried to stretch its winning streak to 10 sessions. Futures tied to the Dow Jones added 42 points. S&P 500 figures gained 0.23%, and Nasdaq 100 futures also ticked up 0.38%. Africa stocks traded mostly negative at the end of Friday's trading session. South Africa, Namibia and Ghana closed negative, while Tunisia was 0.18% higher at 9,008 0.66. Bossa de Able, Business Express.
Well, that's it. This is where we end this edition of Business Express. We value your feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. Business Express returns next week. I am Musa Abubakar. Enjoy the rest of your day.